What if the very thing you love doing creatively is the one thing standing between you and building a scalable business? A lot of creatives wrestle with that tension. They love the craft, they love the art, but the idea of turning that art into a company, managing clients, building systems, pricing services, hiring people, you get it, that is a completely different skill set. Today's guest has lived at that intersection. Welcome, or hopefully welcome back to The Reluctant Entrepreneur. I'm your host, Mike Conrad. My guest today is Christopher Weiher, founder of CLEAVER Creative, and you bet I'll ask him where he got that name from, a video production and animation agency that helps companies transform complex ideas into compelling visual stories. Chris has spent more than 2 decades in filmmaking and video production, and over that time, he made the leap from creative professional to business owner. In the first segment of today's conversation, we'll explore Chris's entrepreneurial journey. What prompted him to start his own company? What surprised him about running a business? And what did he have to learn the hard way about turning creativity into revenue? In the second segment, we shift gears and talk about what he does best, storytelling through video. In a world drowning in content, how do you actually create a video that drives engagement, builds authority, and produces measurable business results? And how should entrepreneurs be thinking about video today, especially in the age of AI and very short attention spans? If you're a creative professional or founder trying to build authority, or someone wondering how to use storytelling more strategically in your business, then this episode is for you. Let's get started. Chris, welcome to the show. I'm really excited about this conversation today. It's right up my alley.
Thank you, Mike. I'm excited as well. I really appreciate that intro and the opportunity to talk to you.
Well, thank you. Let's go back in our Wayback Machine, our time machine, back to the beginning. When did you first realize that you were not just a filmmaker, but someone who might actually build a business around your craft?
Well, I think it was way back in 2013. I was laid off from the video production company that I was working for as a producer. And when that happened, I was actually excited as opposed to depressed.
Someone made the decision for you. It's a lot easier when that happens, right? When there's no choice.
Yeah, I had already been nudging myself that way. I think the 4-Hour Workweek book had come out around that time, and I had read that, and I had gone into my boss's office, and I had said, you know what, I need to work from home as much as possible. And I ended up being able to work, I think, 3 days from home, 2 days in the office. And, with that extra time, not having to commute 2 hours a day, 3 hours a day, I was like, okay, now I can start to kind of do some things online and try some things out. And then I got laid off, and I was like super jazzed. And I was like, this is the greatest thing to ever happen, because now I can just do whatever I want. I was just married at the time, and my new wife was like, so you're just not going to get another job? I was like, no.
Good timing, like, Chris. Great timing.
Great. She's like, this is awesome. But it ended up working out fairly quickly. I just started marketing and emailing contacts that I knew, and started to get a few clients pretty quickly. And so it wasn't that it was too rocky a beginning, because I had at that point a lot of experience, and was able to kind of jump in and start running pretty quickly at that time.
Yeah, I did the same thing when I started my business. I was in the space that I'm in now, formally with another company. So I had a Rolodex. The young people are going, what the hell is a Rolodex? But anyway, I had a contact list that was pretty rich. So of course I hit up everyone I knew, everyone I'd done a favor for, and business came in more quickly than I expected because I used my contact list. Where it really got real was after I exhausted all my contacts. Right now, I'm just like, that was kind of the starter fluid down the carburetor. It really got me started, but you can't run on that forever. So did you have that same experience? Did you exhaust your contact list and then have to really start organically growing beyond that?
It was years later that I really had to start doing that. I was fairly lucky in that I got one really big client that ended up being, just one of these things where it's making 99% of your work, which is tricky, right? Because you're nervous because you're like, oh, well, what if they go away, what have you? But it just ended up being for years that every time they would say, do you want to take this project on? I would say yes, and then figure it out, bring people on for that project. They would say, do you want some more work? I'd be like, yes. We just kept growing that way. And then a year after I started my video production company, I went to a startup weekend for education in Chicago, and I had no idea what that was about, but I said, oh, I've got a cool idea for a startup, and I'll just take it there and see what happens over the weekend. It was selected over the weekend. You stay up like as much as you possibly can. You put together a business proposal. You try and build out some kind of MVP. You do customer testing and try and get initial feedback. And then at the Sunday you present, and then there's a winner. And I walked away with that with a business plan for a second business. And I was just too excited about it to say I'm not going to go after this. So then I started a startup, and that encouraged me to then bring on my brother, who was in LA at the time and trying to figure out what he was doing. And I brought him on as a producer much earlier than I thought I was going to bring somebody else into the business, and it was able to kind of increase our productivity that way. And because the startup was focused on a creative community, I had a bigger resource as far as like talent as well, so that when we needed somebody to do After Effects or editing or whatever, I knew I had a number of people that were already able, and I had vetted them and all these different things. So the two things kind of ended up feeding each other, which was really helpful. But then years later, things slowed down, and I said, I need to figure out how to market. Like, what I've never done real marketing. And that's when I started doing video on LinkedIn, and immediately saw an opportunity there because at that time, nobody was really doing video on LinkedIn. So it was like a novelty as well. But because I had built up this experience in B2B video production, I was well positioned to be able to talk to other business owners about, how to think about video, how they could be using video, how they should be using video, those types of things. So that was like the main way that I started marketing.
When you worked for the agency prior, other people did things that were not creative. You probably had a finance person, a billing person, a customer service person, perhaps all of that stuff, scheduling. Starting a creative agency sounds exciting, but it also means dealing with pricing, contracts, client expectations, cash flow, payroll, all of those things that maybe formerly other people dealt with. What was the biggest surprise when you became a business owner?
The biggest surprise was how little time there really was to do the work. Like, I've always enjoyed editing, and very quickly that went out the window. That was like, well, I can't spend even 4 hours a day editing, because I need to spend the time writing the email to the client, like talking about the project, talking about the deliverables, like looking at the project timeline, working with the other people to say how are we going to do the motion graphics, how are we going to do this, how are we going to do that, and then making calls and trying to see what's coming next, what work is coming next. And I've heard that from other entrepreneurs as well, that it's surprising how, if you think you're going to spend 50% of the time doing the project work, if your company's project based, slash that down even further to 25, 20%, maybe 10%, just because there is so much else that has to be done. So that was eye-opening and surprising. Luckily, I think I adapted to that well, and am pretty good at wearing different hats. But it was a surprise for sure how little time there was to do that production work.
Yeah, my experience when I started my business 34 years ago, and in any given day, on any given day, there'd be 10 things I had to do, 2 of which I loved, 8 of which I did not love. I hated. So of course I would do the things I loved first, and I'd milk that time as much as possible, and then I'd have to go through the list of 8 things that I don't enjoy doing, and eventually that sorts itself out. You know, when you first start a business, it's, you know, you're chief cook and bottle washer, so to speak. You're doing it all. A, because you know how to do most of that stuff, and B, in many cases you just can't afford to like open day one with a team of 20 people, right? So, you know, you're just kind of doing it all yourself, and that's when you realize that there are more than 8 hours in a day. You know, there are 24 hours in a day, all workable. I remember there was a time when I would go in at 8 a.m. on a Monday and come home Wednesday night at 11 and not even realize I've missed a couple of sunsets and sunrises. I was in a factory building, right? Just doing the work. Let's switch gears a little bit to what a problem that I've seen in interviewing several creatives is they tend to struggle with charging what they're worth, particularly in the beginning, right? You're so desperate to get a new customer. Maybe you were a little bit of a unicorn in that you had a client, you had a stable of clients that or contacts that you could work with that probably already knew what the cost of good production is. But many don't have that stable of potential clients, and they struggle with what they're worth. I'm in manufacturing. We build equipment for the electronics industry, and when I first introduced my first machine that I had designed, I was almost embarrassed to tell people what it cost because I had this kind of self-doubt. Like, are they going to think it's too high? Are they going to think it's too low? Do I have to justify it? How do I justify it? So it was always an awkward conversation for me to, you know, really talk about price. Did you wrestle with that early on? And if you did, how did you learn how to price your work confidently?
I didn't have to too much, mainly because I had some experience working for other production companies. And I think that was the part that gave me the confidence to price what I knew the market would bear. And I think that is the challenge with some folks, you know, college age, coming out of college, wanting to get into different lines of content creation work, what have you. Is not having the experience to work with another company, another business owner, to see how they do it. So you can kind of pick and choose what works well and what doesn't. And I was kind of lucky because I worked for one production company as an editor for about 8 months. And then I worked for a number of years for another production company. And I could look at how they ran their businesses and say, well, I like how you have your pricing. I don't like how you have your pricing. I'm going to go with this. Maybe I won't go totally, you know, as expensive as the big guy, but maybe I'll do 80% or something like that. So I had like a little bit of insight into say, okay, you can charge, you know, $150 an hour for motion graphics. That said, things change, right? Like the industry around content creation has completely changed. So now you have people on Fiverr who are saying, I'll do the whole video for $100. And you're like, I can't do that either. So it is challenging to figure that piece out. And it's also challenging to have to realize, like, what we did 10 years ago, we can't do the same way now. Like, we have to be able to scale down and offer more for less. I mean, that's one of the blessings and curses of AI is that you can now do more for less. And so you kind of have to and figure that out and go, okay, like, how much value can I provide with the same amount of time put in for a better product to provide more value to my client? And it's a shifting thing. It's changing faster and faster. But it's a thing that I think, you know, all entrepreneurs struggle with. And I think we're all having these conversations now more regularly to go, okay, what's fair? What's a good use of our time? What's the value that we get out of this? And how can we continue to improve and reduce cost while still making a better product?
Yeah, I think every industry worries about an upstart disruptive force type company, right? Because it just pulls the rug out from under you, or at least has the potential to. And I think your industry specifically has experienced two disruptive forces in the last 20 years. One of them was this, specifically this, the camera. And for my listening
Yeah.
audience, I'm holding up the backside of my cell phone, showing, three lenses. All of a sudden, everyone became a videographer, whether they were good at it or not. So, and there was a lot of friction. If you wanted to make your own content way back in the day, you needed a pretty expensive camera. You needed lights. You needed sound. You had editing was not what it is today. Now there are AI programs that'll edit for you, fairly poorly, by the way, but it'll at least get you started. And I think the second, more recent disruptive force in your space specifically, and in a lot of spaces actually, but specifically in yours, is AI, because AI can generate content, and whether it's the content you specifically asked for, you sometimes have to ask 25 times to keep refining it, but now everyone has the potential to be a creator. And then you add the fact that if you go on YouTube and look up content creation and all that, the mantra that I'm hearing from most creators now is, it doesn't matter how good it looks, just start posting. Just post regularly. Don't worry if it's perfect. Don't worry if it's not perfect. And that just rubs me the wrong way. I'm a production value guy, right? And maybe I'm just old school. Maybe I'm, maybe 100 years from now, they'll look at this and say, oh, that guy's like his grandfather, But I do believe that in any content, whether it's a podcast or a educational series or, how-to or unboxing videos, I don't know why those are exciting, but they seem to be exciting to people. To me, let's talk about a podcast. A great guest, a great conversation, poor sound, failed podcast. Great conversation, great guest, great sound, poor video, failed. You need all three to be great. You need, to me, my opinion, great audio, great video, and great content. Now you have a chance of becoming successful. It has a chance of being viewed and listened to. And I like to be self-taught for many things. I learned how to use Photoshop by like 12-year-old Indian boys, on YouTube, because they're the ones that know. And when I first got into podcasting about 6 years ago, of course I went on YouTube and, podcasts and, production, and a lot of young people are teaching it. And I kind of learned how to do it myself. And I think that the fact that one can learn how to do it, and one can learn how to post it, one can learn how to, frequency, they're told just post. I think that leads to a lot of junk out there. And the first time when I was searching for educational stuff for me to learn, if I saw a blurry video or bad audio, like super echoey, like they recorded it in their shower, I will just go to the next one. There's plenty more. Because my ADHD I spend more time concentrating on, did they not look at this? Did they not listen to this before they hit publish? I mean, my brain doesn't allow me to take in the knowledge. I'm just armchair quarterbacking the whole project. So I think that striving for excellence in production value has been lost by a lot of people. And, you can go on Fiverr or Upwork or name the source, and you can get content made for $10, $5. I can't tell you how many emails today I've received, unsolicited, spammy emails, and LinkedIn posts and, comments on my videos that, they can turn my content into reels or shorts for, $10 or $20. Like, no, I need to make sure that there's a kind of a editorial and production value integrity to the whole thing, because ultimately it's my name that's on there, me that's on there, my likeness. So do you see that in today's world where everyone's a content creator?
Yes, it's a very it's a, I think, you know, it took me a long time to figure out the content piece because, probably similar to you, I had heard for a long time, you got to make content, you got to make content. That's how to market your business. You got to make content. And then it was like, okay, well, what do I do? I mean, I had a YouTube channel and did tutorials and stuff, and that was fine. We got lots of views and lots of subscribers and stuff like that. It was like, okay, how do I convert this into business? And it is true, like you do need to just get started and you need to make something and then you need to improve. And I kind of invented my own formula to that, which was quality plus consistency equals growth. If you have any kind of content and you just get started and then you do that regularly, it doesn't have to be every day, it could be once a week, it could be once a month, whatever. You will grow. You will find some growth. And the higher you go in the quality and the higher you go in the consistency, the bigger the growth will be.
Yeah.
So I try and kind of remind people that. And I also remind them, like, yeah, you do want to have a good quality video. You want to be able to see the person, hear the person clearly, and get your point across. People can also go too far. I've also seen the other thing where they invest too much into the production value and they haven't really thought through what's the value that I'm really providing people. What am I
100%,
actually saying? Like, is
Right.
it just that I'm a successful entrepreneur and I want to just talk about how great I am? That doesn't really help people. Like,
Right.
you have to think really through, like, who is this audience who's receiving this, and what am I really providing them today that's actually going to help them, and get really critical. But I do think it's hard to do that until you just start the process. You have
Yeah,
to get
I
started.
can be guilty of
Yeah.
over refining. I'm such a perfectionist that I've caught myself a few times. Like, okay, Mike, this is just hit publish. It's fine. It's done. It's done.
Right.
Because
Right.
I'll go back and I'll tweak and I'll re-edit and I don't do that so much anymore because I produce so much content. I don't have time to do all that. But
Right.
I know the level I'm at, and that's more than good enough. But there are people who, in business, spend so much time working on the product. They almost because they can, they're adept at that, and they're maybe a little less confident about releasing it to the market and actually, leaving the start line. They're so busy tying their laces 20 times at the start line. The gun goes off, everyone leaves, and you're still there, adjusting your vest and your shirt and making sure your number's on. And, because there's a little bit of safety in that, right?
Yeah.
At some point, you gotta go. And because you don't make money preparing.
Right.
You secure a future preparing, but you don't make any money preparing. You have to actually launch
Right.
at some point. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs spend so much time preparing for the business, adjusting, moving the furniture around in the room, and not actually launching. At what point did you shift from being the technician doing the work to the entrepreneurial building of systems and teams and things like that? How long did that take you?
It was pretty early on. I think I've always been that kind of systems-minded type person where I kind of knew that, like, as the entrepreneur, as the business owner, you kind of have to figure out what you do really, really well and then outsource everything else. And so I had a couple of interns that were doing some editing work for me at the previous production company. And so when I first started my company, they were freelancing at that point, and I was freelancing, but I had a bit more experience. So I said, hey, why don't we form this little group, and we'll create some content. We'll help each other produce some content for ourselves. And then when we have work come in, we can kind of hire each other to do certain things. So that worked out well. And I had also been following a podcast called the Smart Passive Income Podcast by a guy named Pat Flynn. And his recommendation was, your first employee should be a virtual assistant. And so I hired a virtual assistant, I think in that first year, for like half a day. 4 hours a day, and just started to work with her, and she still works for me. She does amazing work. She's producing things now. She's running a lot of the production of our videos. But that was my first employee, my first part-time employee, and it was amazing to have another resource to go, oh, could you help me draft these emails? Can you help me do this? And can you prep this video? Can you prep the footage for this edit before we get started editing and save us 30 minutes here? So I kind of enjoy that piece, and I think there's I don't know. I think Warren Buffett said something like, I'll always hire the laziest person to do a job because they will find the shortest amount of ways to get it done the quickest.
Yeah.
And so there is a little bit of that in there to go, okay, what's the easiest possible way we can do this to get the best possible result? Let's go that way. So yeah, I think there's a piece of me that enjoys that, of figuring out like the system and who should hand it off to who at what point to make it most efficient. And now, with the ability to collaborate through, Monday.com and Google Drive and all these different systems, it makes things so easy compared to how it was, 10 years ago.
Sure. Your company name, CLEAVER. It could be the name of a horror movie. Tell me how that ended up in your world.
Yeah. So my dad was a butcher and my grandfather was a butcher. And so I grew up working in the butcher shop from Downers Grove, Illinois. It was called Chuck's Meat Market, and it was around for about 75 years, I think, in my family for about 50. And I always liked that visual of a cleaver, like cutting a line of film. And so I thought that could be kind of a cool visual to go along with it. And it sounded like clever. So I was like, oh, that's kind of, kind of fun. It was alliterative in that way. So, that was the story. And I was just thought, okay, this would be kind of cool because it'll be kind of I didn't take over the butcher shop like my dad did. So it'll be kind of a way to kind of pay a homage to my family business heritage.
Did your dad eventually sell the shop, or did he just lock the door, turn off the light, and said, "I'm done"?
He did not sell it. He kind of wanted to, but I think it was 2004 or so, and very hard to find somebody who wanted to do that. It was interesting though, because the business that he ended up renting it to afterwards was a jeweler. And this guy came in and he redid the entire shop, put in this beautiful wood floor. We took out all of the cases and everything like that. And my brother had just graduated college at the time, and the owner of the jewelry store turned the cooler into his workshop. So my brother learned kind of another trade of jewelry repair, and he was actually working in the cooler that had now become this jewelry repair workshop. So it kind of was kind of a neat twist of things.
I love company names that have a backstory. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I had another guest on, I forget the name of the company now, but quite a while ago, that had a very interesting company name, and I'm like, wow, that's got to be a fascinating story, like the Cleaver story, the butcher story. And I asked him, where did that come from? Expecting something like this. He goes, oh, it's the best SEO result. Okay, all right. And he goes, it was a URL I could get, that was still available. So I'm like, oh, I guess that makes sense.
Whatever works.
Whatever works.
It's a different time we live in. Yeah.
100%. Looking back, what was the one mistake you made early in building CLEAVER Creative that taught you an important lesson? Maybe something you didn't expect.
One mistake I made.
Or something that just surprised you. It doesn't have to be a mistake.
Yeah.
You had the creative acumen down. I mean, you're doing the same kind of stuff that you were doing before, but what did you not see coming?
I would say I would say it was kind of what we were talking about this shift coming of having to go from, being able to charge, $15,000-$20,000
Yeah.
for a 3-minute video to going, okay, now we got to take that budget and take your $12,000 and make you, 2 videos a month for the whole year, and figure out how to make all of that work. Around that time, I had another intern who was editing for us at the production company that I was working for, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to go out on my own, and I'm going to start a company, and we're going to do videos for," I forget what he charged at the time, but it was like $200 a video or something like that. And I was like, good luck, kid. Have fun. But you're way off on this. And he had a great idea. He called it Vanilla Video, and they're still doing lots of great work. I think they now do videos in Chicago, LA, and New York. And he was ahead of the curve. He had the vision, and he had the discipline to figure out how to make it profitable. To say, there's going to be no frills. We're going to send you a videographer. He's going to show up with one camera, maybe a light. He's going to shoot whatever you need him to shoot. And we're going to chop it up. We're going to give you these social clips. And he made it work. And so, it took me a while to figure that out, to go, okay, things are shifting. We need to be able to have an offering that suits people for kind of whatever budget they can do. I was kind of lucky because when we were figuring that out, COVID hit. So all of a sudden, everybody was recording like this, and no longer was it necessary to say, okay, we got to pay a $5,000 camera crew to come out and shoot. Everyone was just stuck at home going, well, hey, everybody, it's me on camera. How is anyone seeing me? So there was a big opportunity to start to coach people and go, okay, I like what you did there, but you could do this and this and this, and it would be way better. And let's start talking and working together. So that's probably the biggest thing that I didn't know was coming my way.
Yeah. We talked earlier about disruptive forces, and AI, of course, is a potential disruptive force. But I don't see it, I can see it replacing maybe live actors. I can see, it's getting really good. It can create music quite well. But it still takes a creative human to feed it the right prompts. I liken it to, today, and maybe a few years ago before AI kind of came on the scene, you had to be the producer, the director, the lighting guy, the gaffer, every position that you can imagine in a Hollywood set, you had to be that, or at least know about that or hire that. I think AI will replace some of those positions, but it still needs a director. It still needs the creative force. If you just say, make me a video on car accessories, it will. But is it the right video? Does it meet with your client? Does it know the uniqueness of their product? Does it know their specific customer demographic? And you can still feed that in there, but someone still has to get that information. And I don't see doom and gloom for the creative community. I see tools for the creative community. And yeah, it can write, but it has to be told what to write and what context to write and who they're writing to. And it still needs someone to be the guardian at the gate to discern what information it needs to have. And, you may not be going out on a shoot, in the next several years, but you're still a creative director. You're still creating content through these new amazing tools. And even so, one can say, well, the customer could do that. No, I don't think so necessarily. I think customers are the worst to do that because they're looking through a bubble. They're looking through a lens. They're looking through the lens of fear and time and money and all that. And sometimes it needs someone like yourself that's maybe up at 30,000 feet that sees a clearer view, right? And who understands human behavior and understands what are the elements that separate a viral video from a stupid video or a video for the sake of video.
Right.
And speaking of that,
I think the best way of heard it said is craft is knowing what to add, and art is knowing what to take away. And you
Yeah.
need both, right? If you just say like, "Hey, build me a table," AI is going to build you this ornate, beautiful table with all kinds of intricate, designs without thinking it through and go, "I didn't need that. I just needed 4 legs and a tabletop for this case, for this particular scenario." And yeah, you have to have both. You have to have the ability to know what should I leave out in this particular instance, and AI's not great at that. It's really good at adding things, and
Yeah.
then it needs us to go in and go, yes, yes, no, no,
Yeah.
no, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Completely. From your perspective, what problem should video actually solve for a business?
Everyone is unique. There was a time where we would get a request to say, "Hey, we would really want to do a company overview," and you're like, "Okay, cool. Let's talk about like what's the overview of the company? Who are you guys? What do you do?" I'm like, well, and we also want it to be a marketing video, and we kind of also want it to be a recruiting video because we like to use it for that too. And it'd be nice if we could use it for social too. You're like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is 5 different videos, and we have to talk about them in different ways because it can't, just because it's a video doesn't mean it can do magic and do all the different purposes you
Right.
want. So every video needs to, have a very specific purpose, and it has to have, like anything, like a very specific call to action. Like, what do you want the person to do after they're done watching? And that will sort of dictate all the other things around it. Like, as you know, people's attention span is so short. I mean, you might have 3 seconds to get their attention and stop the scroll and get them to pay attention to what you want them to say, what you want them to hear. And then you're probably not going to get your point across even in that one video. So you need to make plans to have 6 other videos that are kind of part of this bigger structural, messaging that then eventually motivates them to say, okay, now I want to go over here and I want to learn more about your product or your service or who you are and take that next step. So it really is true that it used to be you needed 12 touch points, ideally from 12 different sources to get anyone to do anything. Now it's probably closer to 50, and you have to have all these different very specific ideas around how you're going to build that like and trust over time.
We talked earlier about there's just a barrage of content going out now. Some good, many not. One of the 2 most successful infomercial type videos that were put out were the I forget the agency's name, but they're the ones that produce the Squatty Potty and the Poopery, right? Content
Yes.
that not that many years ago would be totally taboo to talk about. And those, I mean, tens of millions of views on that, on a content that most people go, oh, but it was amazingly successful for not just the agency, obviously, but the customer they did the work for. Where do we have to shock and awe our way into societal consciousness? Or I mean, that's one way. But then again, you're not going to sell, I don't think they sell encyclopedias anymore, but you're not going to sell the next edition of an encyclopedia by getting gross, right? I mean, you got to know your audience, I suppose. But how does one, what do you do when you go in and talk to a client that says, oh, we want to make some videos, Chris? What kind of questions do you ask to know not just about the product, but who their customers are, and then what turns on those customers? What are the buttons that get them going?
Yeah, I think it is very unique time, because now when you look at something like meta ads, it used to be that you had to make a lot of choices around, who is this ad going to get served to? And, if I'm trying to serve it to manufacturers, well, now I need to go in there and I need to select the manufacturer person who works in the manufacturing business. Well, what's their job title? What's their age range? All these different things. Now they have turned all those switches over to AI to say, you make the content and we will get it in front of the right people, and we'll tell you how it performs in front of the right people, and then you can make more. And so the I don't want to say the age of the viral video is gone, but to some extent, a little bit it is. You still want to make content that is catchy, that you're proud of, that is creative and unique, but you have a lot more ability to play in some ways, because the working with the algorithm will tell you how things perform, and then you can continue to iterate on that. So generally what I do when I work with clients is we have like an hour and a half long discussion. We talk about everything, kind of like this. We talk about everything about them, about their journey, about where they're at with their business, what they want to have happen, things that are unique to them, things that they're interested in, they're passionate about. And then I try and, reinforce to people that it's no longer enough to have the video. It's no longer enough to have the one viral video. You need to have a video strategy, and that's how you need to think about it, as opposed to we're gonna make our video and that's gonna be the ad that blows us up. It's like people's attention span is way too short now. You need to think about this as a strategy that we're going to make, 6 videos this year, and maybe we will try and go for that one viral video. But we also need to have other ideas that we're talking about and saying, okay, like what are the different channels that we need to play in and test to see how does our brand really resonate with these different audiences, because the same video you make for YouTube is not going to be the same video you make for TikTok. It's not going to be the same video you make for Instagram or for LinkedIn. You need to have a different strategy depending on which audience you're trying to reach.
Business-to-business companies, B2B companies often struggle with storytelling. First of all, let me back up a little bit. I'm a huge storyteller. I speak regularly in my day job. I'm in the electronics manufacturing space, so I travel around the world speaking at technical conferences on really technical, boring things. And my method is through storytelling. And very few people in our industry do that. They all, talk about, very scientific stuff and very down the rabbit hole stuff. I'm a storyteller. That's just the way I'm wired. And it stands out in my industry because very few people are doing it. But a lot of companies struggle with the concept of storytelling because they believe their product is too complex or too technical. How do you turn complex ideas into compelling narratives?
Sure. So kind of as I was talking about, starting to market on LinkedIn, that became a really interesting place to start talking about this type of stuff with technical people. One of our clients is an industrial engineering company, and their content is can be a little heady, can be a little technical, can be a little bit boring, but it's worth getting into in different ways. So what I try and tell people is you can have affinity topics. So if you are in a very technical space, you don't just have to talk about your work all the time in your video content. You can talk about other things that you're interested in and passionate about, and then that will kind of bring people into your content, and then they will begin to know you as the guy who, I'm into tennis, is the tennis enthusiast who's also a video producer. Right. And so you can have affinity topics that appeal to a broader audience, and then get your technical information out in other ways. So people are, as you know, are interested in storytelling. They're interested in your personal story. They're interested in your journey, the challenges you went through, the successes you've had. And you can get to know and like them through that video content, through that storytelling, and then put out, case study, a very technical case study as a PDF. That case study does not need to be a video. It could be a video, and it could be a very compelling video potentially, but you don't have to have everything as a video. And so I try and kind of remind people to look into these other topics as well, to say, okay, well, what are you passionate about? Is it family? Is it your hobby? Is it the things that you're doing outside of work? Let's talk about stories that you could tell about that, and that will like endear you to your network, to new people in your network. And then when you do put out that kind of boring case study, you'll have their attention and you'll have their trust, and they'll be more likely to read it or to say, hey, I really like this person. I know somebody who might benefit from this case study, and I trust this person who put this out. Let
Yeah.
me forward it to them, and they will then check it out. So that's, I think, really where video does great work. Is it's great at building know and like and trust, but it doesn't have to do all three. You can use it for building the know and the like, and then you can build the trust with those case studies, those technical papers, what have you, with other forms of media.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because it makes me feel better about what we're doing. Um, I break things up into different channels, so to speak. So I speak at technical conferences, and I have a half hour to 4 hours, depending on whether I'm an instructor or just a presenter. And I can tell stories if I have enough time. I can tell stories. I can make it very relatable. Dare say, even in our industry, even funny. And then I have a podcast that I host in addition to this one. The products we sell add to the reliability of our customers' products. It's a value-added process that the circuit boards go through to make them work for more than 1 year. So I have a podcast called Reliability Matters, where I interview subject matter experts on the subject of reliability. Nothing about my product, but just basic reliability. And that creates authority. That creates trust because it's non-commercial. Then for those who want, tell me more, who want to go down the rabbit hole with me, or the mine shaft in some cases, I have a Tech Tuesday series that I produce, which is specifically, let's go deep on one particular subject. And then I write a lot of case studies and white papers and things like that. So I like to think, at least in our case, there's something for everybody, but there's not one thing for everybody, right? And I separate those out. So people who don't like the theatrics and the goofy dad jokes and, the crazy animations and all the stuff that I tend to do in my live stuff, that's okay. They're not going to get turned off by it because they're going to go down the technical rabbit hole. And for those that just want to have a basic understanding of what their problem is and what general solutions are, they can go the other way to other content. So I think it's really important to know who's reading, watching, listening, attending, and craft that presentation style, whether it's video or live or written on a word processor and published to a technical forum, to know who the audience is and have something, not one magic bullet, but something that caters to all the different learning modalities. Some people are tactile, some are kinesthetic, some are exceptionally whatever. Some people like to listen, some people like to watch. Yeah, just do it all, and we've got them all covered. So almost every personality type finds the venue or the medium that suits them.
Yes.
That seems to be a good strategy. It's worked for us for a number of years.
Yeah, and I will say that is one of the things that AI is pretty good at, is being able to say, hey, take this case study I made and help me turn it into a script for a compelling video for LinkedIn. It will help with that. It can really do that well. Once you have quality content, it can help you sort of figure out how to repurpose it in these different formats and say, I'd really love to have a compelling story that goes along with this and pivots into it. It can go then and read all of your past, blogs or look at your vlogs and say, oh, you should tie this into that and remix this in something new. So I would say that's kind of an exciting part about working with AI now, is you can create a lot more from what you already have, which is kind of neat.
Yeah. One of the challenges I think every industry is facing, particularly when they try and create content, and I'll preface it with this statement, you're getting old when you start any sentence with kids these days, but I'll say it, kids these days. I'm now my father. The attention spans are much, much, much shorter. And I'm speaking to you millennials, and I'm speaking to you Gen Zers, and I'm speaking to Gen Alpha, or whatever the next gen is. the attention spans are much lower, and there's just so much content out there that they really. I don't say that as a criticism. I say that as it's a reality, right? How do we get information across, knowing that particularly the younger generations and increasingly the older generations, baby boomers like myself, I find my attention span's getting a little lower too. I'll swipe up, very quickly if I'm not subjected to instant gratification. How do we create content that either A, is designed to keep people on longer, in which case we're kind of swimming upstream a little bit, a lot of friction there, or B, can be presented in a time capsule that could fit a standard 60-second TikTok video or whatever. God forbid TikTok video, but in my world,
Yeah.
in my world.
Yeah.
But even LinkedIn, if you want to put an organic video on LinkedIn, I think it's limited to 15 minutes or something, unless you do a link, in which case the algorithm kind of not quite shadow bans you, but it lowers its sharing of it. But how do we do that? How do we either A, get them to stay on longer, or B, accept the fact that the attention spans are short and work around that?
I think for B2B people, my advice is make something that you like. Start there. Don't try and get caught up too much in, oh, well, I saw this one video and it had this hook and it had this thing and then it went to this and then it went to a jump cut over here and they were doing this. Yeah, you can go that way, but only if you really like it. If you really like watching and engaging that way, if that's your style and that's how you like to consume stuff, then yeah, maybe try making that video or something that's influenced by that. But I try and advise people to say, start with, do you care about what you're talking about? Do you care about this content? Do you like it? And go from there, and then continue to experiment and play. But it's I see people get very caught up in this game of, oh, well, my last video got 500 views, and this video only got 50 views. It's like, well, if you're selling B2B, you may only need 2-3 clients, depending on what you're doing.
Sure.
You may only need 2-3 new clients each year. You may only need 1 new client each year. So if you're making the video that gets the right 50 views or the right 20 views even, that's all that matters, that you're talking to those right 20 people, or you're getting the right 5-6 comments on LinkedIn that gets a really interesting conversation going around your industry, because as you say, like, everyone's time is very short, their attention span is very short, and if you're getting the right conversations going, that's what really matters. So I try and advise people to say, hey, don't get caught too much up in numbers of views and likes. Really look at what the conversations are that you're starting. And if you are the one leading the conversation, if you're the one hosting the party that people are having a good conversation around with that's compelling, that's really what matters the most as far as B2B selling, in my opinion.
Podcast time goes by at about 2x speed of real time. So I'm looking at the clock now. I'm like, we're almost out of time. So just a couple more quick questions. If an entrepreneur listening or watching today has never invested in professional video, what's the smartest first step they can take?
I would say I tend to advise, and I picked this up, I did not invent this myself, but I tend to advise people to say, write down 10 frequently asked questions that you get about your business, and then write down 10 questions that you don't get, but you really wish someone would ask you.
That's smart.
And that's where I started. Was the first video I made for LinkedIn was why you should be making videos for LinkedIn. And that was a question that I didn't get asked, but I really wished somebody would ask me.
Ask me this. Yeah.
Exactly. Because, you get the question of like, well, what is the video you make? But how much does it cost? How long does it take? All these different things. But people don't come and go, hey, why should I be doing this? So write down those questions that you really wish someone would ask you, and then try and record it yourself and see what you come up with. And if you like what you have, show it to someone like me and say, hey, is this any good? Or if you're really feeling gutsy, go ahead and post it and see the reactions that you get. I don't think you need to start with a super high production value. I recommend just trying to get started, trying to get in a rhythm and say, hey, we're going to put out one video a week, and we're going to do this for 3 months, and we're going to evaluate how it goes. I think there really is a strength in experimenting and playing with content. And then as you figure out what the recipe is that you like, that works for your business, that gets a good reaction, continue to improve on that as you go. And understand that, like, this is a process. This is something that you're going to be doing for the long term. I call it networking at scale. You don't go to a networking meeting and just expect to get a sale that first time you go. You sign up for a networking group and you plan to go all year, or for the next 3 years, you're going to plan on going there once a week or once a month. And you're going to expect that over that course of time, you're going to build those relationships and you're going to make sales from those relationships because you're consistent. And that's kind of how I encourage people to get started is, as you say, like, you can spend a lot of time in analyzing and thinking, is this perfect? Did I make the perfect video? And by the time you put it out, it's like, is it even relevant anymore? It could be time-based. So I do encourage people to just like write down those 20 ideas, record a few, and if you like it, post it and see what happens, and then start to have conversations with people and say, hey, okay, how can I improve it? I didn't like how it sounded. There was a weird echo. How do we get rid of that? And continue to iterate and get help as you go.
Yeah. We've heard of A/B testing. This is more like A, B, C, D, E, F, G testing, right? Just take your message, put it out in a bunch of different styles and formats, and see what you like best, what seems to stick, and generate reactions. Last question: how did you define success before you started business, and how do you define it now?
Oh, that is a good question. I think when I first started, success was just surviving. Really, it was just like, I just want to be able to do this. I want to be able to pay my bills, and I want to be able to just not have to go back to the get a job. Really,
right.
Now for me, I think success is how well am I taking care of my team, because I've got about 10 people that are doing work for me.
Wow.
And are we innovating in ways that I'm proud of? We have like a productized service that we have been spending this year launching with the help of AI that I'm pretty excited about. I don't know if it's going to be a success. I don't know if it's going to be a failure, but I'm pretty proud of what we're making, and it's new. I haven't seen anyone else doing this, and I'm excited about it. And hopefully it will be a success. We'll find out. And if not, then it's like, well, okay, what's the next cool thing that we can build? So to me, that is the next sign of success, is like, what are we doing that's new, that's creative, that I'm excited about, that I'm proud of, that provides value? So that would be my next sort of like, thing on the horizon.
Very good. Well, to my audience who would like to get more information on CLEAVER, yes, that CLEAVER, CLEAVER Creative. If you're watching this on YouTube, right down here, it's right below me where it says see more. Click that, and the URL for CLEAVER Creative will be there. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, then of course go to that podcast app, look at the show notes, and that information will be there as well. Chris Weiher, thank you so much for the generosity of your time, for sharing your entrepreneurial journey with me, and for the great sage advice and best practice advice for content creation and strategy and things like that. I really appreciate this conversation. I appreciate your authenticness and in telling us about your journey and where you came from, and the bad timing to start a business. I should ask you this: is your wife happy now? That is the stress gone, or is she an armchair worrier? My wife is an armchair worrier.
That's a good question. I think she's okay. We actually ended up splitting up a number of years later.
Okay, well, hopefully it wasn't due to the business decisions.
No, it had nothing to do with that. And actually, we had the best possible separation that I've heard, luckily.
Not War of the Roses, no.
My new partner, we have a 1-year-old now, and she's quite happy with my business life, because I can still run my business and still be have time to take care of the baby, and we do pretty good co-parenting that way. So we're doing pretty good.
Well, you heard it here first. You heard it here first, audience. If you want to start a business, prepare to get divorced. No. That's totally unrelated. Well, it's 50-50 anyway. So it doesn't take much to move that scale over. Well, Chris, thanks again for the generosity of your time and sharing your wisdom and your insight with me and your journey. I really appreciate it, and I enjoyed it.
Thank you, Mike. It was my pleasure. This is great.
And continued success to you.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
Thank you. As I reflect on this conversation with Christopher, one thing really stands out. Creativity alone is not a business model. Talent alone is not a strategy. And passion alone does not guarantee sustainability. At some point, every entrepreneur, especially creative entrepreneurs, has to make a decision. Am I just going to practice my craft, or am I going to build something bigger than myself? Chris made that decision. He took storytelling, something artistic and personal, and turned it into a structured, strategic service that solves real business problems. That shift from creator to founder is not automatic. It requires discipline, clarity, and the willingness to think differently about your own work. Another important takeaway is this. Video is not about production value alone. It's about clarity. It's about connection. It's about telling a story that matters to the audience, not just to you. And that applies far beyond video, whether you're building a tech company, launching a consulting practice, running a manufacturing business, or hosting a podcast, the same principle applies. If you can't clearly communicate your story and your value, you will struggle to scale. If you enjoyed today's episode, share it with someone who is building something of their own. And that's a wrap. Thanks for being part of our Reluctant Entrepreneur family. We've been very busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, so be sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. And one favor, if you're watching this on YouTube, consider giving us a like and subscribe. Those 2 simple clicks really help us expand our reach. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, I'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com to apply or recommend a guest. And of course, a shameless plug, if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon, and as an audiobook on both Audible and Amazon. All right, that's it for me. I'm out of time. Thanks for listening or watching. Until next time, be unstoppable. I'll see you again soon.